Good morning and welcome to the Good Builder podcast. Today's guest is Dan Saunders from DS Construction based in Christchurch, New Zealand. Our first New Zealand builder to ever be on the Good Builder. And I'll tell you what, he's a good builder. I've had a couple of conversations with this gentleman on the phone, and I just had a conversation prior to starting this podcast. And I said to him, everything that we've kind of discovered about being a good builder, you just said in about 30 seconds. And he was talking about both Australia and New Zealand because we share those sorts of similarities. He's a fascinating fellow who started building in about 1993 and spent more than 3 decades refining what it means to build a home that actually performs. In 2002, he formed DS Construction, and by 2012, he had built the first 8 Homestar-rated house in Australasia, the highest rating ever achieved at the time, which is pivotal for the industry and pretty fascinating, and I'm sure we're going to get into that. Since then, he hasn't slowed down. He's built close to 30 super homes, and he told me a little bit about these super homes and what he's got out there, a website and the movement that he's had in market since about 2015. He's won multiple awards across master builders all across New Zealand. His work spans from everything from architecturally designed passive homes to the more modest energy efficient homes in Australasia. He also does panel walls. He's a man of many talents, and I am so pumped to welcome our first New Zealand builder, who I'm sure you're going to see a bit more of on the Good Builder, to the couch, virtually anyway. Dan, how are you, mate?
Thanks very much, Aaron. Appreciate being here. Well, thanks for the invite anyway.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Well, you've had an amazing history, Dan. Amazing history, mate.
Well, I think I've only just started too. I mean, it is a crazy time of, there's within the building industry as you go through, like it is with life, there's many ups and downs and many, many lessons learned. So, all that is just taking a hold of those and either learning them from yourself and passing them on. So I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, I think we're more going to learn from you, Dan, than from me, I reckon, mate. That is
I don't know.
exactly
I
why
don't
we
know.
got you on here. Oh, man.
Yeah, I don't know.
Look,
I always say that the day you stop learning is the day you die. So I'll always continue learning and I strive to learn.
I love it, mate. You are amazing. You know, one thing I think I said to you on the phone when I first met you, and this is not a dig at Australia, even though we are based in Australia. But what I've always found working over in New Zealand is New Zealand people in general seem to be a little more professional and a little less of that laid back attitude in terms of stuff like you were saying, wanting to learn, pushing it a bit more, just being a bit more professional in the way we try and deliver. Do you kind of see that, Dan?
Yeah, I do. But also think that within even New Zealand, there's always those levels of people who, you could say that as rogues around, taking deposits and not delivering and stuff like that. So there's levels of people entering the business and wanting to learn. And then there's people at the other end, as I said before, who it's how
Yeah.
I've always done it. So, I think we are very similar. We're only it's a bit more than a stone throw, but still
Yeah.
we've got so many similarities, across the board. So,
Absolutely. Well, from where you
mm,
sit over there you're in Christchurch, aren't you, Dan, at the moment, mate?
correct.
Or
Yep.
that's where you're based.
Yep. Yes.
What are some of the biggest pressure points that you're kind of finding over in the New Zealand market right now, Dan?
Well, very similar to you guys is the fuel crisis that we've got.
Mm,
So I think we're it sort of fluctuates, but we got, for diesel, because we'll run on diesel utes and vans and what, so I can only really refer to that. Because I think
yeah.
we're paying around $3 a litre at the moment
Oh, wow.
for diesel. I think you're
Wow.
sitting maybe about $2.30 or
We
something.
are. Yeah, yeah,
So
you're just about right, mate.
yeah, so we've got that on top of so we've got that cost. Then on top of that, we have what we call a road user charge. So we've got to pay $760 for every 1,000 Ks on top of the diesel cost. So that's for all
Wow.
diesel vehicles. So there's another, outgoing cost that you've got to come up with or then on charge to clients, which makes the building price go up. We had
Wow.
just after COVID, and you guys are probably very similar, is we had material shortages.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we had a big timber shortage. So,
Mm,
framing timber. We had a big plasterboard shortage. So,
yeah,
Winstone's wallboards, which is the main player in New Zealand,
yeah.
there was, for some reason, there was this, oh, we're going to be short of wallboards. So people pre-ordered and then stockpiled it everywhere. So this
Yes, I
created a
heard that.
huge hole a huge hole and a huge delay because people were not playing fair.
Fair. Yeah.
I've heard of the stories. They will ring up and say, right, we've got 3 or 4 jobs booked in, and then they clog the system, and then they only wanted the one, you see, so they were trying to go through all these different
Wow.
merchants to secure one job. It was just crazy. Yeah.
Wow. And
So there's just a
materials
lot.
over there they're even a bit more expensive over there too, isn't it? Like it's a bit hard. Like in New Zealand, it's because you've got a similar sort of demographic in a way in terms of salaries and who you're building for. We got similar sort of salaries and things,
Mm.
but your cost of building seems to be a little more too, Dan. So
Yeah.
navigating
So
that
if
would
I
even be hard.
yeah, so if I just went and said, what's the average square meter rate of for a standard cookie cutter house, I think this might be about $2,800 to $3,000 a square meter. That's just
Okay.
for a
Yep.
standard building code minimum house. You know,
Wow. Mm.
I remember back in the day, the last house I built was in 2000 for myself was 2006, and I built it for $750 a square meter, finished with driveways down.
Wow. And mate, and I know that house would have been beautifully, beautifully done because it's done by you. But when
Oh,
you're
oh,
talking
you
about
maybe, but sorry. What I was going to say is, I go back to that thing about you don't know what you don't know, and I was really just on the learning curve of learning about energy efficiency there. So I did a few things that were better than code, but if I look back now, it says, "Oh, I would never build a house like that again." It's just like
wow.
anyway, but learn.
Mm. But
Mm.
that was one of the fascinating things of our little prior chat, Dan. One of
Mm.
the things that you said was you were talking about code and you were like, but that's like the bare minimum of what you have to do. And that kind of
Yes,
leads me into your super home journey. Well, and how
yes,
you got
yeah.
into that.
So there's a saying we use here, and I said this before. The building code here is the worst house you're legally allowed to build.
That's it. Love it.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. So, here's the building code. And that's, we're building twice the building code. This is talking about our values and insulation, not so much about claddings and things like that. So you guys have a building code, a similar thing called a building code over there, right?
We do. You
We've
got
got,
the
yeah,
NCC.
yeah. So we have the New Zealand Building Code, and within the New Zealand Building Code, there's sections about stability, interior moisture control, exterior moisture. That's claddings and windows and all that sort of stuff. So we have each one, which is the insulation,
Yeah.
methodology about how we insulate and stuff. So they've recently played with that and upgraded a little bit, but they haven't looked at it as a whole system. Like, combining, you have to do a minimum of insulated foundations, this for your walls, this for your recessed windows, not just thermally broken aluminium, but there's a whole lot of stuff that's in there. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And I'd
Yeah.
imagine, I don't know, but I'd imagine that your building code might be because your environment's a bit cooler, condensation, all that sort of thing.
Mm.
Do you know, we should have a look at this actually, Dan. Do you know if it's a little bit more tedious or harder than the code that we have here in Australia? You might not actually.
Well, I know that, and I can show you, we can, make another podcast about this,
We would
is
love to.
that
I would love to.
there's like, because you know how you've got masonry, clay brick veneers.
Yeah.
And you and from your old days managing the housing companies, I won't say names, but
Yeah.
you have a brick cladding, then you have the aluminium window sitting in that cold part of the cavity.
Yeah.
So the thermal break that's now pretty much mandatory in New Zealand still sits within the thermal break. So the other side of the aluminium is still getting that hot cold difference, and that's where
Uh,
moisture is creating there. So
mm,
yes, there is moisture problems. They're a little bit better, but
yeah.
the building code, I believe, needs to change as a holistic system. And we get a lot of pushback when we went through the changes with H1 around, windows and insulation in the ceilings and stuff like that. Is a lot of pushback came from housing companies wanting to keep their costs down, which I
Okay.
understand because people need to be able to get affordable houses. But there's got to be
Yeah.
a limit. What's morally right? We've drawn a
Mm,
line in this, or I've drawn a line in the sand where I won't build below this level, and the building code is way down here.
that's
So I've
interesting.
basically, yeah. So I won't build. If someone says to me, "I want you to build me a house. I want you to build me a code." If they don't want to sort of say or heed my advice and say you should do this because of this and this is why, then I'll walk away from the job because I don't want my legacy to be any more tainted but like I say, the houses that we built back in the day, that's fine. You don't
Mm.
know what you don't know. But moving forward, I always think, what's my legacy going to be? And my legacy is not going to be building crappy houses that make people unhealthy.
That's phenomenal, and that was the other point that you said to me prior to this podcast, Dan, and probably, feeds into that super home journey of yours, which I'd love
Mm.
to talk a bit more about. But you were saying that New Zealand in the world has some of the top problems with children with respiratory
Yeah,
problems due to the homes being built, which is, yeah,
it's
fascinating, but not
crazy.
in a
So
good way.
no,
Mm,
it's like I'm doing a little addition in between these other houses that we're doing, and the house is about 10 years old,
mm.
and the extra room that's going on is on the south side, so it's a standard brick cavity, and I pulled the bricks off, and there's black mold on the paper on the building
Oh,
wrap, and
wow.
that's after 10 that's
Horrible,
after 10 years.
mate.
So, and this is where I sort of lead on to, I guess, with the super home movement is what we talked about.
Mm.
That came about. So one of
Yeah,
the
tell us a bit.
co-founders of the super home movement is Bob Burnett from, he's an architectural designer. He's got his own company. After the earthquakes, which I'm sure you're probably well familiar with,
Yeah,
a lot of houses got, the term is munted. So he had a
yeah.
house up on top of one of the hills around Christchurch, and his house got munted. So he had to leave. He had to then rent a series of either building code houses or sort of mid early century villas, which were, like basically wooden tents. And his kids were like 1 and 2, say. And basically they were fine when they were in his old house because it was well designed. Moving to these other houses, they developed asthma. And the doctor
Wow,
basically said it's the moisture in the house, it's the mold in the house that's causing it. So
wow.
he said, well, so this is not enough. And this is about just after the time I did that 8 Homestar house, our sort of worlds combined, not combined,
Collided.
but pass collided. God
Yeah,
is the word.
I love
So
it.
in 2015, he started the Super Home Movement, which was basically an open source sharing platform where builders, designers, suppliers all meet and talk about how to build better and just basically provide ideas and information, free to public, free to builders. I don't know how many builders I've pointed in the right direction about, you know, building better in healthy homes.
Mate, that is the good builder, Dan. Like,
Mm,
you are doing the good builder for the last 2015, 11 years. That is so cool to hear that you guys
mm.
are doing that. So what role do you play there, Dan, in that? Are you one of the co-founders that sort of
No,
support
no.
that
So
platform, or
I was I was probably one of the original builders, so the
that
first builder,
joined it?
because we 2000,
Very cool.
yeah, that joined it, and then I've been around, just participating in everything. We have super home tours every year where all the builders or suppliers that
Wow.
have high performance houses that we open up to the public. So we've sort of downsized it a bit. It used to be for every weekend for a month, but that was just too much, too hard work. And then
Wow.
we had about 10,000 people through all these houses over this period,
What?
just to
And educating clients.
yeah. Yeah, educating suppliers, educating builders, educating public. And that's what we strive for is trying to get as much information out there so people can make really informed decisions about how they build their house. Rather than spending $2,000 stone bench top, why don't you put $2,000 into extra insulation and change the bench top later on? Because, we remodel
Yeah.
kitchens every, 10 years ish?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. You're thinking smarter about your home and how it performs and look at some of that aesthetic stuff later, which I
Yeah.
think is,
Yeah.
wow, mate, that's really
We,
fascinating.
Yeah, it's where you spend your money. Where's the
Yeah.
correct way to spend your money? And that's on the areas that you can't change. Insulated foundations, high performance walls, recessed high performance windows, balanced ventilation systems with heat recovery, solar, maybe if, all pre-wire for solar, all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. But the stuff that you can't change is the thermal envelope. And that's the most important thing. You can always add a
Love
balanced ventilation system in later on, but, you know, why breathe stale air every day? Or,
yeah.
why not have fresh air all the time? So yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's getting bigger and bigger, and you know what? You were probably part of this, Dan, and I commend you for it, mate. There has been what
Mm.
we're seeing is there's more talk about healthy homes in Australia and Australasia. People are starting to talk about it, how the homes perform. And I've been in the industry for a while, and probably up until the last couple of years, I hadn't really seen it from the client side start talking about it in open public forums like Facebook groups and things like that.
Mm.
But one thing I don't understand, and excuse my ignorance if Dan, but I wanted to ask you, mate, like, what is the difference between a super home and a passive house? Or are they very similar and just a different word for each other? Or how do you go about defining that, Dan, or,
Yeah.
or building to that? Sorry.
So, like I say, the super home movement takes all things. Like you've got passive house, you've got Homestar, you've got cool earth building. Like straw
Yeah, yeah.
bales. You've got all that sort of stuff. So super home movement we've got a thing we've done late last year is the design guide. So that basically is how to build a healthy home, a new healthy home. We've also just last year done the renovation guides. People who can't afford a new build can
Yeah.
renovate their house to perform better as well. We've done this, and I'll point you to the website and show you
Yeah, we'll
that
put the
these
link in.
design guides, yeah, these design guides have low hanging fruit where you've got. So with the new home stuff, we have a certification as base, better, best. So base is this, and then base better is base plus a little bit more, and then best is the best of everything. So
Far
to
out.
answer your question about the difference between a super home and a passive house is not a
Yeah.
lot, because
Okay.
all of the houses that we do, if they're not passive house, they're still thermally modeled by the
Yeah.
architect. So they go through the software and figure out how much percentage of overheating is going to happen, where we need shading, how many kilowatt hours per annum is going to be used, on average and stuff like that. So it all follows the same process. We have airtight layers. We do blower door tests. It's just that they're not certified.
Yeah,
So
in the end.
They're very similar,
Mm,
but they follow the same path, and they get to the
yeah.
same end goal that is a healthy home.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you look at all methods of construction to achieve it, which is really, really interesting. And sorry to go on a segue, and I hope this not hope this feeds into it, but I'm feeling that the purpose why you did the panel walling may fit into this. Maybe it's speed of construction as well. But could you tell us a little bit about that, Dan, that other company that you're a part of as
So
well? Because this is also fascinating.
Yeah, so it's called EcoPanel, and it's basically a prefabricated wall system. You know how
Yeah.
you've got a SIPS panel, which could be
Mm,
magnesium oxide, or OSB, which is sandwiched over polystyrene. So
yeah.
that's what they call a SIP, which is a structural insulated panel. So
Yeah.
our panels is basically, I call it stick frame on steroids. It's basically we use LVL framing, have
Yep.
no I don't know if you call them dwangs, nogs, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So there's on the
Nugs.
exterior wall, yeah, so there's
Mm.
no dwangs or nogs in the exterior walls. Insulation runs full height. They've got
Oh,
a rigid air
wow.
barrier, which is the plywood on the outside. We've got the pro-climate wraps, battens, and then and then the inside we have airtight layers and a service cavity, and all that is built in a factory, and then we just crane it on site. So we
Oh
can we can potentially have a job, depending on the design, weather tight in 5 days.
my god. You know what, Dan? The penny
Yeah.
just dropped for me. We follow you on Instagram, I think, EcoPanel. If you're on
Yes.
Instagram, we follow something
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think we do,
Yeah. That's
mate.
fine. Yeah.
Fascinating. I didn't know. I kind of did, and I didn't make the connection till I saw your email and notes, but that is fascinating, mate. Are you building in that way? And I know that the healthy portion of it is more important, but for some reason in Australia at the moment, we're obsessed with speed because of the housing accord we're trying to achieve by 2029. I think 1.2 million
Yeah.
homes, which we're never going to achieve. Does it considerably? I think you mentioned it, but it considerably speeds up construction, and do you actually service Australia?
I did actually get an inquiry from Australia a couple of years ago, and I pointed them in the direction. I forget the name of the company. There is one other company over there that does very, very
There
similar.
is,
I
yeah.
forget the name of it, but they do exactly the same.
Don't worry
It'll
about
come
their
back.
name, it's your podcast,
Yeah,
mate. I
that's
wanna
right.
see if we can get
Yeah,
you
yeah,
over
that's
here.
right. Yeah, okay. So for example, I did a panel job up in the North Island, which is, South Island, North
Yeah,
Island, up in Tauranga.
yep,
And end of last
beautiful.
year, it was for a group housing company, which is great
Mm,
that they're taking the next Navigation Homes in Bay of Plenty. So they're taking the next step about
they're
building
big.
better homes. Yeah.
Mm,
And so we sent the panels up. We got our windows from Poland. So they arrived to home. I sent a truck and trailer up with external walls, mid floor, internal walls, and we were pretty much ready for roof windows in 2.5 weeks. And
wow.
that's if you think about building that conventionally with the scaffolding, you put your frames up, then you got to take a piece of
Yeah, yeah,
plywood up,
yeah.
then you got to take another piece of plywood up. It's all done in the factory, controlled conditions,
Mm,
minimizing waste, accuracy is high, and it goes up really, really quickly.
yeah. Oh, mate,
Mm.
that is amazing. Are you building a lot of your homes at DS using
Yes.
EcoPanel as well? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we do.
Awesome.
So we supply Dan Saunders Construction as well as
Mm,
builders and clients. So we've got
yep.
a number of jobs I'm working on in the pipeline to get out the door for other clients. But
Yeah.
where possible, depending on the design, because not all houses can be prefabricated. It
Yeah,
comes
yeah.
down to the design. So we try and get early engagement. So we
Mm,
say, this design needs to change here, here, and here. And we don't like putting steel in buildings because, as you probably know, steel and aluminium is the highest thermal conductors that we use in the building industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're leaning towards, there's a company in Nelson that does structural timber portals.
Wow.
So
Okay.
so they have these little brackets and they tie them with threaded rod and screws and stuff. So we're doing a development with Bob Burnett in Christchurch, which I'm sort of going off on a little tangent here, as I told
No,
you I
go,
would,
go.
where we're
Love it.
doing we within Christchurch, in New Zealand, there's been an influx of high density living or high density
Okay.
homes where you take a quarter acre section, the developers will put 7 or 8 houses. They're like this wide, they're just,
Are they
shoehorned in.
townhouses there? We
Yeah,
call them
yeah, they are.
townhouses over here. They're townhouse. Like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Yeah,
Connected
so high
townhouses.
yeah, into, high density interconnected townhouses, which are not healthy, for people. They like minimal amount will see sun, the rest will overheat, and some will get no sun. So
Yeah.
they are just the shoehorned in, whereas this development on a quarter acre site has got 4 architecturally designed homes. They all see the sun, they're all separate, to each other. They've got their own garages, and within these houses, they needed some on these gable ends, they needed obviously some bracing in a shear wall. So we've gone with these timber portal frames. Now, where I'm leading with this is this development is a low carbon, zero carbon development. So that's the next evolution is, obviously minimizing, making energy efficient homes, readily available, but also sustainability is a high goal as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the front house, which is the first zero carbon house in New Zealand.
Wow.
So and the other 3 are low carbon. So obviously with steel, if you're putting steel in there, the embodied carbon's quite high, whereas
Yeah. Yeah.
with timber you have the sequestered carbon, which drops
Yeah.
it down. So basically the front house is 8 tons below zero carbon. So
Oh
it's
my
sequestered 8
goodness.
8 tons of carbon through the
Wow.
acquisition of materials and the building of it.
Far
Mm.
out. That's significant. And we actually do a little bit of work with a forestry association over here, Dan. And some of the builders, what they're trying to do is give them tools to say how much carbon they offset because of things like this.
Yes.
They're building in timber frames, but mate, and they talk about, they give certificates out, builders to clients saying you saved 120 flights from Melbourne to Sydney, for example. I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine what you are saving over there with that. That is
Oh,
phenomenal, mate. And I would love
yeah.
to get over there one day, man, and see this thing.
Yeah. Well, like I say, it's going to be open as a show home as well. So there was some carbon calculations done by a company called Nezo, which is Nezo, net zero, right? Abbreviated. And they did the calculations. So basically, if we really think about it and we have to try that hard, is how we built these houses is not too dissimilar than how most of the houses are built. So a lot of the houses could be low or zero carbon, just,
Yeah.
by changing a few things, tweaking what you'd ideally want as a cladding and, just changing a few things. I don't think it's going to be that hard. So watch the space. That'll be the next evolution.
That is so
Zero
cool.
carbon
And
homes. Mm.
mate, you know what, Dan, like, this is why I love The Good Builder, and it is so good to connect with you, mate. We've had, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, we've had a couple of conversations, and every time you blow me away, mate. I love people like you that get out in the industry and freaking do it, make it happen, and show the industry how it's done. It's really interesting for me doing this Good Builder thing, and you probably know a little bit of my history, but I tried to be a
Mm.
builder. But what I'm seeing is that, like, a lot of really good builders like yourself, it's almost like there's no, and I'm not having a shot at industry associations or governments or anything, but no one's kind of like giving us the answers. The answers are coming from within the industry through great people like you that are, bringing out these products or new methods of construction and how to do things better and then showing the industry. It's a phenomenal industry, mate. And, as I said, so cool to
Well,
connect with an international builder like you that's doing some great
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. So and like you say, and I think it's across the board with any political system, is you have people lobbying for what they want, and what they want is not necessarily the right thing. But
Mm,
in this case, what we lobby for, and we've had many a meeting
yeah.
with a politician and meetings with the housing minister who is in charge of changing the building code. And what
Oh,
should happen
wow.
is the building code, when they updated the H1, which was obviously the thermal efficiency side of
Yep.
the code, and they said, right, we're going to have a minimum amount of insulation on the ceiling, and exterior windows were thermally broken by choice and not mandated. But now you have to, in certain climate areas of New Zealand, it has to be a minimum of a value of 0.5.
Heard that. Okay.
So that's quite, that's very low for an R value.
Mm, mm.
But then that's fine. So that's great. But what they should have also said is, right, you're incorporating that R value. You need to now recess it into the warm part of the wall. So the glass is in line with the insulation, and you get 20 or 30% better performance out of your glazing. So
Yeah.
things like that are being missed, and we're going with that. So there's like
No,
instead of just
cool.
picking one piece and saying let's do that, how about thinking about it as a holistic system? Because you can't play you can't play a game with one rule. You've got to have a whole lot of different rules to make the game work and flow properly.
Yeah,
And it's
you're
just
completely
one.
right.
This is one of the things. Yeah, this is one of the things that I
Yeah.
just get frustrated about.
Well, it raises two things for me, Dan, and we've talked about it a little bit over here, and it's so cool to talk to you over there because we are
Mm,
very, very similar, mate. You are going through the same things. One that I say over here is like when they're making these rules, is there really industry consultation with good builders like you? And do they take you on board and then really ask you to advise, is this the best decision? I think that could be something, Dan, that could, make these rules and regulations a bit easier out there.
Yeah, they do have consultation, but do they listen?
There you go.
We're going to do this, we're going to do this, and give us your reasons why we should or we shouldn't, but we're still going to do it
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's, with I should install a brick wall in my office so I can beat my head against it every now and again.
I didn't know what you were
It
gonna
is
say then. I thought you were gonna say, "I'm gonna show them how it's done." No, just beat
No,
my
no,
head
no,
against
just,
it.
being against your brick wall.
Just
But that is quite frustrating. Yeah, the politicians sort of, they give you lip service a lot of the time. Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I see. Yeah, oh, that sounds great. And then just walk away to the next meeting, and it's just like, I've done my public service now. I've gone to see this person and talked about this building system, and that's it. So I've done my job. Whereas the follow
Yeah.
through needs to happen, and that's where it needs to change. And it needs to happen from within, because it's not going to change from a government level. And that's what we try and do with the super movement. And even there's other entities that are lobbying for change as well. But it's just getting it everyone on the same level and understanding the why. That's the big thing. Why we
Yeah.
should be doing it. And that's one of the, what most important words that I think about is the why. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and you're completely right, and that's what scares me. Like I said, we talk a lot about speed here in Australia and things like
Mm.
that, and we're trying to make ways to build faster, and how do we hit? There seems to be all this focus on hitting this target because we've got so much immigration and all that sort of stuff happening over here. But to your point, and I'd been to a few developments here in Australia, I had carpenters and builders and all that sort of stuff go to me, "Don't look behind the walls because that house is like 14 months old and already has mold." And
Mm.
then we have another whole set of problems, as you said, health, all that sort of thing. I think you mentioned something before the podcast around like probably the single most, and I'm sorry to take words out of your mouth, and I hope I haven't got this completely wrong. Please correct me, mate. Dan, just correct me, mate. But you
Yeah.
will, mate. But you said something along the
Yeah.
lines of like the single most beneficial thing we can do for society's health are build good homes. Was that sort of
100%.
close?
Yeah, something like that. So, there's statistics in New Zealand where I think this might be right or wrong, is where every dollar we spend in building healthy homes, you save $4 in the health system.
That's it.
Because, like it's not, yeah. So if you think about not only so I'll go back to, like when you're building a house, people always think about the price, the price is what you
Yeah.
pay. What's the cost?
Yeah.
So you could build a house and it might cost you this much more up front, but what you're saving over the long term. So we build houses that have no power bills. So for
Yeah.
example, if we're like an old house here where it's not energy efficient by any stretch, work you on
Yeah.
it, our power bill might be on average $500 a month. I don't know what
Yeah.
that's like in
Wow.
Australia, but
Yeah.
so that's $11,000 a year. Now,
Mm.
if you think about building an energy efficient house where you're not spending that much money on power, what can you do with that $11,000? That could be on your mortgage. Imagine how quickly your mortgage is coming down.
I know. Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
amount the amount of doctor's visits you'll avoid by breathing good air, by being having a consistent warm temperature of sort of 18 to 21 degrees. It's
Yeah.
the World Health Organization recommendations. Mental health, good mental health,
Yeah.
because, if you just got people don't want to turn on their heaters because of the cost of power.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
definitely.
there's this whole cycle. Whereas if you just, spend, rather than saying, I want my granite benchtop now, as opposed to I want it 10 years down the track, once you've
Yeah.
saved, power.
Mate, I'm with you, and this actually brings me to a bit of a question that I did have for you, and I think it's
Mm,
going to be pretty fascinating. Like, obviously you build a super home. You know,
mhm,
I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Now that we've gone through what a super home is and your
mm,
philosophy behind it, and how you have a look at it, how do you educate the client when you're talking to them about all of this? Is that a big part of the process when you're taking on a client to make sure you've got the right ones, to make sure they're properly educated, telling them why you do things? How does that all work? Because I don't mean to, I'm not being offensive or anything, but does it add significant cost? And then, of course, you get the questions. I don't know if it does,
mm,
Dan. I'm just
mm.
sort of asking you, mate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's fine. Back in the day when we first started the super home movement and we talked about the super home tours, and I said we had 10,000 people through these houses in 1 month.
Yeah.
A lot of the people would come through, and this was early on in the piece. A lot of people would come through and say, "Oh, what color are your curtains? What is that flooring?" As opposed to, "Where did your windows come from? What's the R value? Have you got a balanced ventilation system in there?" So what
Yeah.
we find now is, because we've been around for so long, we're very proficient at what we do, or we've had a lot of experience. Is probably a better way to put it. So
Mm.
we've got people that come to us now because they know what they want. Back in the
Okay.
day, had to do a little bit of education and tell them the why. This is why you should spend this much money. But now it's a little less of that with our clients, as they come to us and say, I love what you do. I want what you build.
Mm.
So it's so they already know about what goes in a super home. So, and that's really cool. I guess within the super home movement and what we've done, it is creating this education flow onto the clients, which is really cool to see.
I
Rather
love
than
it.
saying it's matte oak floor, you could say, right, we're using hydraulic underfloor heating. So
Yeah.
the questions have changed over the years, which is good to see.
Yeah. That's really cool. And you know what I
Mm,
think that comes down to, Dan, is that you've built this trust, you've got that reputation, you've delivered, you've done all the things that you said you're gonna do, and then
mm,
now you're known for it. And I think that's an important point for all builders in any facet of whatever you build, the importance of education and educating your client, taking the time to give them something of value so they understand what you're doing. And then in
mm,
time, you will just become sort of the go-to if you're good at what you do. And you certainly seem like that's
mm.
why people come to you. They know why they're coming to you,
Yeah.
which is
So,
very, very cool.
one of the things I did learn from the tours that we used to do, and this is being, like, I've been in business for a little bit. I had um, sort of an interesting, I was in a business partnership prior to restarting Dan Saunders Construction again, which is another story. With with the tours, you'd always people would come up to you and say, and I'd say, "Oh, have you got a builder? Have you, tried to do the hard sell?" And, what I've found over the years is people come to you for what you do and the why you do it. So I don't,
Yeah.
if what's meant for me won't miss me. That's the
Yeah.
way I look at it now. So
I
when I'm
love it.
talking to people, when I'm talking to someone, I'm just talking to them like, "Oh, great, you're building a house. Here's what you should look at. Tell your builders, tell your architect, and then they'll say, well, actually, we haven't got it, and then they can come back later on. But I don't go in for the hard sell these days. It's just like, just get the information out there, and what will be will be, and it usually
I
works
love it.
out pretty well.
No,
So that's one of the good things that you just an evolution of learning that you do is how you
yeah.
deliver to people. Yeah,
Mm.
and listening is one of the important things.
Yeah, I love it. Love it, Dan. That is really cool.
Mm,
Well, if like the other thing I wanted to actually chat about, which is very interesting, this other
mm,
Australian connection that we have, if you don't mind me speaking about, is that you do a little bit with the guys at Future Builder.
mm.
Kyle
Yes.
Zanetto and Luke Davies and the guys there. Big shout out to you guys. We love what you do, and
Yeah.
and we're big fans at the Good Builder actually of
Mm,
Kyle. I told him I'm a fanboy, and I actually call those guys, which is very interesting, and it makes sense why you're a part of them, Dan. I give them a nickname, and they know it, and I actually say it in public. I call them the new breed of
yeah.
builder
Right.
that is exactly like you. And now that I've met you,
Yeah.
you are the new breed. And actually, you're not the new
Well,
breed because you've been doing it for
well,
11
it's
years. Oh, no, but yeah,
yeah.
but
No.
I mean,
No. Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, in that way of like you've got those old school work ethic and you've got that old school craftsmanship around you and you love what you do and you're very proud of what
yeah.
you do. But I mean, new breed in terms of like, you said at the beginning before we started this podcast, and I was fascinated with it, mate. You're going, like that super home platform that you've created. Like, that says it.
Mm,
The new breeder builder is okay to collaborate with other builders and architects and trades and suppliers and even clients that they want to
mm.
educate the industry. They want better for the industry and they don't want to build shit homes and they want to leave a good, like you say, legacy behind. And that's why I call you the new breed. And that's pretty cool. But do you mind talking a little bit about your
Mm.
sort of involvement with the guys over there if you can?
Well, I think we came in the first time I seen him. Must have been on Instagram or something. I saw Kyle and what he was doing, and I thought he sounds like a pretty cool dude. As I said to you, I like connecting with like-minded people
Mm,
because that's how you grow. You're always learning
yeah.
something new. And then I think that was prior to them launching Future Builder, or maybe it was about the same times.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
was, thought this sounds like, something that I can be involved with, and got on board with them and what they're delivering. And it's very similar. The way of thinking is what they're delivering is they're delivering from their learnings, it's mainly about building business and how you promote yourself and run your business and systems and stuff like that. So that's, they're delivering from their mistakes. So,
Yeah.
there's another saying you probably heard is that you never learn from it. I always try and not learn from my own mistakes. I always try and learn from other people's mistakes so I don't
Yeah.
have to make the same ones. So that's what they're doing is Kyle said, I've stuffed this up here. I've stuffed this up here. This now works for me. It may not necessarily work for everybody, but he knows
Yeah.
it works for him and he's
Mm.
delivering that. It's the same thing with what we do when we're building houses or high performance homes. I know how many things it takes to recess the window with this type of cladding, the best and most efficient way of doing it. Here's how you do it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
pass the information along. So those guys are great. So just connecting with those guys has been pretty cool.
And I'm sure they're gonna be very excited to connect with you too. I think the
Yeah.
other thing I said when we were starting this podcast was, I was talking to the QBCC, and you've already heard this, so I'll do it very quickly for you, Dan. But
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
the story goes, and not a story, but I had a chat with the QBCC, Danny there, and lovely, lovely lady, and knows a lot about obviously being in the QBCC for over 20 years and things like that, seen a lot. And she said to me that likes what we do, and she said, "What could you do better?" I said to her, "What could I do better?" And she said to me, "Capture the good builders' information on video, almost like collecting data and research," which I'm doing right now with this fabulous gentleman on the other end of this line,
Mm,
Dan Saunders, and pass on that to future generations and they can learn from some of the lessons there. So I think, to your point of these young guys out there doing stuff, I think you can add as much value to them because you would have seen a lot. And of course, I know they're starting up some stuff over in New Zealand. We're very aware of that and know the guys quite
mm.
well. I think you're a great builder for them to team up with over there, mate. And I can't wait to
Well,
see what you're
I get
doing
that.
over there. It's cool.
Yeah, I guess it'll be it's just some local knowledge, I guess we can say. Don't
Oh,
go to that pub
100%.
or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
so
cool, like,
yeah,
and that's what you
yeah,
need, I think. The local knowledge, I think, is super important. I could tell you another story about a modular builder from Victoria that tried to build some modular, apartments up in Cairns when, Northern Queensland versus Victoria, 2 very different states, and I think
certainly different climates.
200 portable apartments, Dan, have to be torn down,
Wow,
and they're just built.
crazy.
Anyway,
Wow.
that is the importance
Anyway,
of local knowledge, and it's the importance of knowing how to build.
yeah,
So that's why I love what
yeah.
you do, mate, and I love how you're
Mm.
sharing that knowledge. I obviously not having a dig at that builder, they probably didn't have the knowledge and know what to do, so they did what they thought they did in Victoria, and that's the result. So,
Yeah,
the knowledge sharing, the collaboration, all of that stuff that you're doing and have been doing for over 11 years now with Superhome and all that sort of stuff, mate. That is why I wanted you on here and wanted to meet you because
mm,
that's just
yeah.
legendary stuff. That's just cool.
Thanks for that. Like I said, there's never a dumb question to ask, and like I said, the day you stop learning is the day you die. And I'll
Mm,
I'll never be afraid or be ashamed to say I don't know because you
yeah.
can get yourself in such a pickle by
Mm,
just trying to bullshit your way through it, so to
yeah.
speak.
That's
Yeah,
why I asked you what a super home was, Dan, because I thought
yeah,
if I'm gonna bullshit Dan and try and talk to what a super home is on this podcast, he's
yeah,
gonna pick me apart. I'm like, "Nah, what is the difference, mate?
Yeah,
You know, so
yeah,
now I
yeah,
get it,
yeah.
mate. But again, the day you stop learning, and mate, I've learnt so much over this podcast, and I actually want to give a little bit more learning to builders, which I'm sure they've got a lot from this podcast already. So I've got a few more questions for you, mate. And the other
No
one
worries.
is,
Fire away.
mate, if you could give a practical piece of advice to a builder in Australia and New Zealand trying to future-proof their business, what would it be from you? It doesn't have to be around super. It can be anything, mate. What
Mm.
would be your piece of advice about how you've gone about it?
Be curious.
I love it.
You know,
Yeah.
be curious to learn. Like the transition from building, like I'll use this for an example. Transition for building a standard building code house to, say, a passive house or a high performance energy efficient super home. Like that's quite a try to transition. You can't do it just by going like this because you'll make a whole lot of mistakes, and that's
Wow.
okay to make mistakes. But to do that, like it's cost me a bit of money just in mistakes. I'm not saying a whole lot of money, but financially it does cost you with, oh, this took twice as long as it should have because I didn't know how to do this. So I think it's just transitioning slowly. If you're going to use, I'll use the super home movement for the energy efficient building as an example, is just
Yeah.
transition slowly, learn. Don't just go, you can go, dive right in. And that's great. But just you learn and listen to other people who've got experience about it. And that goes across the board for everything, like what Kyle and Luke are doing with future
Mm.
builders, the same thing. Listen to what people have got to say.
Yeah.
I'm a good one for sayings, and there's a saying that I use a lot that I always think
I love
about
it.
is that when you speak, you're only repeating what you already know. If you listen, you might learn something new.
Wow. I love it. That I've never
So
heard that before, and
yeah,
it's just true.
yeah, yeah. So I was just trying to remember that's exactly how it went. That's what, like people, sometimes I go into a room and I'll be quite quiet because I'm observing, I'm listening, and I'm learning. Like when you've got back when I was on the tools a lot more, if there was a subcontractor or something that was doing some work nearby, I just, in my peripherals, be watching what they're doing, driving a digger, for example, the only way they're going to learn to drive a digger is to get on it. So just watching what they're doing, the little tricks, and the things that you can pick up along the way can just help you and help the other people that follow you.
Yeah, wow. Well, mate, I I actually have another question off the back of that one there, because you're a
Okay, go on.
fascinating guy, man. So when you were looking at building better and building better than the code and that, this was some years ago. This is, over a decade ago, you're doing this. Why? Was it that curiosity? Why did you get into super home? Because to be honest, maybe I'm completely wrong, but you tell me. I don't think at that time much of that stuff's being talked about. Healthy
No, it
homes,
wasn't.
all of that. Nah,
No.
none at all. Like if I was in the industry at that time, and I had not really even heard of passive house at that time. So
Yeah.
how did you get into
So
it?
there was,
What drove you?
I've got a little funny story about how the evolution of this happened. If you want to bear with me, so
Mate, go for it.
you guys might have had, I think you did have a TV program called Jack of All Trades
Yeah. Yep.
over there.
Yeah.
So that came to New Zealand in 2007.
Yep.
I was in the first season, so to speak, as a competitor.
Oh, wow.
And then I got to talk, and then I got to talking to the production crew during the time because I like talking to people and connecting. So they came back the next year and they changed the scenario of what they were doing. So basically, they decided to build 4 houses in Queenstown. Yeah, it was in Queenstown, and they asked me to be a building consultant for them.
Wow.
That evolved, and then I went. They did another season up in Waihi, which is the same thing up in the North Island. Did 4 beach batches, and these ones were made out of steel framing. So I got to talking to the steel framing guy and said, "This is pretty cool. Show me what you're doing here." So then I started another company with steel framing at the time. This is 2009 ish, and then through
Steel
my
framing wasn't a
contacts,
thing in 2009.
yeah. Well, and then so that was fine. And obviously, steel framing is not great for high performance building,
Yeah.
but it was, and that's where the first 8 Homestar came about, was this collaboration with New Zealand Steel, and there's an outfit called Beacon Pathways, which is again similar to the super move where it promotes building healthy and stuff like that. There was a collaboration where we built this prefabricated house in a airport hangar out of steel framing, and it was called Warm Frame, and it was using steel framing but sandwiching it between insulation so it would perform
Wow.
much better. So that sort of evolved and evolved and evolved. And then that's where I didn't meet him at the time. And that's where sort of our Bob, Bob Burnett and I sort of collided in around 2015. So he was doing one thing, I was
Wow.
doing another thing. and it just sort of collided because he was the first one
Fascinating.
in New Zealand to do a 10-star home.
Oh,
So I did the
wow.
first. We have this
Extra.
little joke that we had this little joke back in
Go
2000
11.
and no, well, yeah. Now it's the first 10 version 5, 10-star home version 5. We
Wow.
did that. We did the 8. He was working on the first 8 at the time, but we beat him to the punch. And then
Wow.
I said to the architect, "Let's do a 10." But then when we got to that stage, we were going to do it, and then we'd found out that he'd already done it. That's that's how it all
Mate,
came about, really.
what two better blokes to get together to start working on Super Home, along with a bunch of other builders and great
Oh
builders as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
But,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's
Fellas and
fascinating,
designers and
mate.
stuff.
Amazing. And
Sorry, yeah,
and I've only got
very kind
one
of
question.
tangent.
No, go off on any tangent, Dan. I love your story, mate. And like I said, I'm gonna have you back on and probably not gonna say what I'm gonna say, but
Yeah,
we'll talk about New
save
Zealand
that to
later,
later.
mate. I
Yeah,
I love I
yeah.
love I love what you do, and as I said, you
Mm,
are so fascinating, and I think you're an amazing builder. I see what you do. I've only got one question from that now, is can we
okay.
get the footage of you on TV doing jack of all trades? Is that around somewhere?
God, I've probably got it on DVD.
Oh, wow, mate. That that is cool. Like, that is mate, something to be proud of. So, if you can
Oh
dig it
yeah,
up
but
from the
that's the thing. It's just
archives,
yeah, yeah. I'll have a look. I'll have a look.
yeah,
I'll see. Maybe there was this news article. I think it was on the local breakfast show. I'll flick you a link to it or something if I can find it. Yeah.
mate.
Anyway.
You say stuff, so this is probably the wrong word, but nonchalant. Just, I did
Mm,
this, I did that, mate.
yeah. Yeah.
This
So where
is,
I was going, yeah, where I was going with the always improving and stuff is always
yeah,
when I'm talking to people. If you think about the All Blacks, they always striving to improve, right? It hasn't been been a bit wobbly of late, but if you think
mm,
about the 2000, sorry, the 2010 versus to the 2015 All Blacks, they were just on point. They're always
yeah,
improving. Just they were unstoppable. They were a beast of a team,
yeah.
and they always look at ways to improve. So that's what they do. When you're and have you heard of the book Legacy?
No,
It's
no, no,
by
no, no.
it's actually it'd be an interesting read if you're into books. Is
I love it.
Legacy by James Kerr. It's about the All Blacks and within the All Blacks and some of the mantras that they have. And there's a chapter called "When you're at the top of your game, change your game." And that's one of the things that I always have in the back of my mind as well. So
Wow.
if you're always winning, then people will catch up to you, and that's okay. But you need to do this, and then
Oh,
people can do
wow.
that.
Wow. And I think that All Blacks era were probably the epitome of that sort of stuff, weren't they? Like, just
Oh well, I
absolute
mean,
monsters.
yeah. If you think about
Mm,
the 2007 debacle in France. Was it France? No, it was in England, wasn't it? Where we got ousted in the quarterfinals, and then the internal changes that happened within the group to come
yeah,
back and then get to 2011 and then to double it up in 2015 was just amazing. So
just
that sort of stuff
phenomenal.
was always going on in my mind.
Oh, mate, you're inspiring. You actually stood hairs on the back of my neck when you're talking about. I love that stuff. I love it. I love it, Dan.
Yeah,
I love it. I know our audience loves it, and I do care, but I don't care. I love it, mate. I just freaking
yeah,
it fires me up. Like now you got me going, and I bet you I get off
yeah.
this podcast, and I'm like, how can we do things better at the Good Builder? That is going to fly through my brain for the next week. So I'm going to be back in touch with
Yeah.
you. I reckon.
Yeah, no, just like I say, I'll show you. I'll take a photo of that
And
book anyway if you're interested in reading it. It's quite a good one.
oh, mate, our audience would. Thank you so much, Dan. Mate,
Mm, mm,
I've just got one last question for you, and I really don't want to stop this podcast, but as I said to all the community and yourself, mate, we're going to have you back on. Actually, I'd like to have
mhm.
you back on as a bit of a regular to see what's going on and talk more. I think
Yeah,
we can go deeper on the super home and a bunch of other stuff. This is Dan, this is DS Constructions, what he does, what a legend, and we'll put all your links below if anyone wants to
yeah,
reach out to Dan if that's
yeah,
okay, and especially with EcoPanel,
yeah,
mate. If you need a distributor over here, I probably can't do it, but if you do, mate,
yeah,
I'll bet you there's a
yeah,
few people over here. And if any builder, I don't know if your plans, but if any builder wants to have a chat EcoPanel, we'll put the link below
yeah,
or have a look at his website. I think it's
yeah.
phenomenal, mate.
Thanks for
But
that. Yeah,
no, no worries. Look, mate, there's a lot of builders talking about that stuff over here and not many suppliers. And I know there's one particular supplier in that space. I don't know if it's Eco, but I'm very and I'm not having shots at people, but I'm very big on if you're a builder and you know how it gets put together, generally you create a better product. And I not sure if their products are developed by a builder. I
Mm.
think it may be imported from somewhere or anything, but that
Yeah.
doesn't matter. We'll put all those things there. I think it's important. But mate, my last question for you, and I think to be honest with you, if just you personified it through this whole podcast, but mate, we're called the good builder. What do you think
Mhm.
makes a good builder, Dan?
By just having a good sense of grounding, good morals is one. Just, yeah, I think that's probably it really. It's just have good grounding, good morals, and then everything else will just fall into place. So,
Dad.
there's another saying is, like always leave a bit of skin in the game for the next guy,
Oh,
if you know what that means. So,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
something else, just always thinking about the next person who's following you. How can you make it easier, or what can you do to help the next person? So I think that's probably it. It's just, yeah, is always be there, look for the opportunity to help people. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's the most simple answer we've ever had on the good builder, and that's not a bad thing. I think
Yeah.
there's some foundational things that I've been doing this a bit now, Dan, as you know, and
So,
and the more I talk to really good builders like yourself, Peter Wood from Avid Property over here, he's been in the game 50 years, a wild reputation over here. He works for a massive property developer, but they build homes now with Villawood, and they acquired the AV Jennings company. But anyway, as I'm talking to people like yourself, and there's people that are doing really good things in the industry with a good reputation, and I ask them that question, there's, some of them do talk about those personal traits. There's only very few like you just did. And
mm,
I truly believe that that is the foundation of a good anything, the
just be,
personal traits of
yeah.
having good morals and stuff. And it does drive the rest of your behaviors. I'm a big one on, like ripple effects, like the little pebble you throw in, which may be your morals, ripples
Mm,
out to bigger things and bigger positive things, or it can be ripple out to bigger negative things if it's the wrong foundational value that you have in your life and things like that. So, mate, that was a fascinating answer because it was
mm,
the most simple, but I think you clearly summed it
mm.
up.
Just be a good human. It's as simple as that.
Mm.
Like, I
You
mean,
know,
there's a lot of people that have gone through all sorts of, like people have different levels of issues that they have. An issue here for somebody might be an issue here for this person, but then that issue here might be a huge issue for somebody else. So just being compassionate and empathetic to people, just be a good human. Pretty
yeah.
simple.
Well, mate, yeah, if we all practice that, we'd have a better world too, not just better builders, which I think is wonderful.
And
We
cheaper
need it.
and cheap and cheaper fuel too, maybe. If we just
Yeah,
stop
better
being
morals.
stop
Oh, mate,
stop, well,
we can get political if you want, Dan. I don't
no,
mind,
no,
mate. We
that's all
could
right.
say we're
Let's leave
independent.
that
We
for
can say
let's
what we want.
another day.
All right, we'll leave it for another day because, as I said, I really want you back on, mate. This has been a fascinating podcast, and honestly, yeah, if you ever want to come over and build in Australia, I'm sure the market would welcome you. You're a good builder.
No, I
Your
know
eco panels of
there's plenty of good guys within the future building community. I'm sure that
there
they're all
is,
doing wonderful work. So
yeah.
I wanna come up and over and do a road trip around Tassie and catch up with some of these
Oh,
guys in person. But I'll see some of these guys early July anyway, I think. So that'll be good. I'm looking forward to it.
awesome. Well, once again, Dan, thank you so much for your time, your insights to our whole community. We'll put all of Dan's links below. Go and check out some of his projects and the great builds he does. Check out his eco panels. I know I'm trying to push Dan to bring eco panels over here, but anyway, just go and check them out and see what they're about and maybe start a
Well, mate,
discussion. You never know,
yeah,
may lead.
I think maybe what needs to happen is we set up a company in over there to just
Oh,
not to ship them over there, to manufacture them over there. It's pretty easy.
okay, there you go. That might be an exclusive for the good builder down the track, Dan, opening a factory
Yeah,
over here with his
yeah,
eco panels. But we're going to stick close to
yeah.
this gentleman because he's an absolute weapon. And thank you so much once
Thanks
again
very
for your
much.
time, Dan. And mate, as I said, you're welcome anytime here. You're welcome virtually or in the couch, in the couch when you ever make
Yeah.
a trip to the sunny coast.
Oh, well, definitely 100%. Yep, will
Cool.
do.
All right, mate. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, brother.